All right, here we go. Hello to my friends and Pega partners from all over the world. Welcome to the Pega Partner Hour, a monthly webinar aimed at providing Pega partners with the support that they need in sales, technical, and industry domains. Some quick housekeeping. As always, we will be recording the session. If you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to drop from the call. And you are welcome to watch the recording at a later time. Before we get going, I wanted to remind everybody about some really important information. As of the end of June, the requirements for distinction levels, specifically for technical skills, has changed. The new minimum level of currency for all technical skills has been raised to 8.8. So please keep in mind, if you want to stay current, bring yourself to Pega Academy. That's academy.pega.com. And really, it's the best practice to update to the most recent version, which depending on the class is going to be platform 23 or 24. So again, please, if distinction is important to your organization, the first step is to keep your technical assets current. Okay, so today we have Peter van de Putten and Kate Lepore. They're going to discuss and show us how to use what the future of Gen AI at Pega is with Blueprint, Automate, Analyze, Coach, and Knowledge Buddy. In the second half, Kate Lepore is going to introduce Pega's Gen AI Socrates, a first of its kind generative AI tutor that revolutionizes learning and enhances Pega proficiency. So with all that said, and without further delay, I'm going to turn things over to Peter. Peter, please take it away.
Of course, well, thanks, Randy. It's a great opportunity to be here today, like to talk about this exciting topic, being on maybe the other side of the pond. I couldn't resist to put in a little bit of Latin here, Quo Vadis, Enterprise Gen AI, but that of course means where are you going, Enterprise Gen AI? Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the future of Gen AI at Pega. Obviously, we all have experienced that AI is pretty much changing everything around us, right? So it started actually with AI. We were using AI tens or hundreds times per day, but without even noticing when we were Googling or, when we were using Google Maps or a route planner to find a route or listening to Spotify. AI was already everywhere, but I think generative AI kind of changed the game in the sense that almost everyone became a maker of AI. Yeah, and if you're the CEO of a company and your daughter is doing her homework with ChatGPT or your mom is generating cookie recipes, it's only logical that you would ask your employees, like, why aren't we using AI within our company to do, well, to use that same intelligence for enterprise use cases. But then it becomes really interesting to also have a bit of a feeling like where all of this could go, because these developments are following up, each other so quickly that it's hard to see, the forest from the trees. So that's what I would want to do today, give you a little bit of a point of view of where we are now and what we have most recently released around Gen AI. But definitely also give you an indication of where we might be going. Now, how about this idea in the market on AI? We actually tested this in a survey, and you can see that it was an interesting combination of one side, the business leaders that we interviewed were quite bullish on outcomes. So you can see here that 93% say it's likely they will increase their use of AI in the next 5 years, and they expect to be able to attribute at least half of their increased profits to AI. And on the flip side, there is also nervousness about certain challenges, and that's also resulting from potentially a lack of understanding of what AI really is and what are the best use cases to use AI. But if we want to predict the future of AI, then rather than saying, hey, where is AI going? What is AI navigating towards? That's almost like the wrong question to ask. We should have a view of what does the future business look like? What is our North Star for, let's say, the ideal business? And then how can AI help to implement that vision? And of course, that North Star For Pega, we define it as the autonomous enterprise, right? So the autonomous enterprise, the idea is quite simple. Yeah, if we can have self-driving cars that get us towards a certain goal by doing clever combinations of AI and automation in the moment, also to react to all kinds of unforeseen circumstances, why can't we have autonomous enterprises that do exactly the same? Yeah, and same way how AI is indispensable in self-driving cars, in autonomous cars, it's really a key component of the autonomous enterprise. But it goes beyond that. We need maybe even more than AI. There's some other kind of fields that are fundamental to the autonomous enterprise. And what you see here, this is Norbert Wiener sitting in his MIT office in 1949 with his own autonomous car. And Norbert Wiener, he was the founder of a field called cybernetics, right? So, which is all about responding in the moment to information that's changing, turning it into decisions, what to do next, taking those actions, but then really also learning from that feedback that we do the right thing, and can the system become even smarter over time? Yeah. So, and that's a really interesting point of view that aligns well with this autonomous enterprise. It also tells you that it's not enough to just have a basement filled with data scientists. If you don't bring that intelligence into a process or into an interaction, it won't have impact. Yeah, and you really need to operate in that ever-changing environment and really turn it into automated decisions that allow you to become this self-driving business that is combining AI and automation to optimize towards certain goals. Yeah, so if we want business to become more of this kind of autonomous enterprise, we actually need AI that becomes a bit more autonomous as well. Yeah, so, and if that sounds a little bit like science fiction to you, don't worry. There's a bit of a maturity path here. Like in general, we need the organizations that you help. Maybe in the beginning, all of their processes are manual. Maybe put in a bit of case management to provide more visibility in processes, interactions, and journeys, as and when they're running. And then we can start to automate these tasks. And this is pretty much the muscle of Pega that helps with that. The brain comes into play then to say, hey, can we actually insert intelligence into those processes to drive towards better efficiency and effectiveness? Now, most organizations, they are in between this automated and intelligent. But then ultimately, you get to the stage of the autonomous enterprise, where it's really a self-driving business optimizing towards certain goals. What type of flavors of AI do we have to help with this? Of course, today, when people hear about AI, it's all about generative AI, that creative AI that we can use to not just generate text, but generate images, but generate entire applications as well. A real kind of creative force. But we shouldn't forget that there's these other types of AI as well. I call it left brain AI. It's really similar to in people, the left side of our brain is more concerned with making optimal decisions. Yeah, maybe sensing the environment, turning it into prediction, what's going to happen, then turning that into decisions to take actions, taking the action, but also learning from that feedback. Yeah, and of course, if we combine these two things together, then we actually get the best results. Yeah, I can look at these capabilities here and put them more into this kind of sense, decide, and act loop, where left brain AI and right brain AI is working seamlessly together. Yeah, and we have the capabilities behind this to make this real. Yeah, on the sensing part, it's maybe translating speech to text with voice AI, doing NLP, predicting customer behavior or case outcomes, listening to real-time streaming data, even things like process mining. You could see them as a form of sensing. But then we can actually turn it into decisions to act, right? So at the core with decisioning, also driven by this combination of business rules, strategies, policies, with powerful machine learning models through our adaptive decisioning, for instance, but also GenAI, and to breathe creativity in that process, and really also come up not just with decisions, but maybe also to answers in a particular situation. And translating that and actually taking these actions using the muscle of Pega once we decided what to do, to really take the action. But most importantly, and this is a little bit a new way to look at the muscle of Pega, is to use the process also to capture the outcome. Yeah. So, and whereas before that was only, let's say, important for people monitoring a process and to monitor what is the impact on KPIs. For AI, it's really important because it can actually, we can feed it back into the AI so that the AI can learn. Yeah, so this shows kind of the full breadth of AI. What I'm going to talk about in the remainder of this call is specifically around the future of GenAI. So the right brain AI at Pega. I'll first talk a little bit more about where are we now with 23 and 24.1 and where's the market for GenAI. And then I'll talk a little bit more about where we might be taking this in future. Yeah, so let's start with where is the generative AI market now. Yeah, so what's interesting about enterprise generative AI is it's using the same AI models that underpin consumer AI, generative AI like ChatGPT. It's the same models, but the use is very different. It won't be the case that we just go into a free-form chatbot and type in all kinds of customer confidential data and then get an answer, and then we need to figure out what to do with that answer. McKinsey already did this study where they said, like, well, there's around 75% of the benefit of generative AI. We can capture that with a handful of functions where we would apply that Gen AI, as long as it's really built into those vertical use cases, sales, marketing, but also development of applications, customer operations, customer service, exactly those use cases that we focus on with Pega. But you need to really be able to build it into a process, into an interaction, or into a journey. And you need to be able to kind of address all these risks and requirements that enterprise has around accuracy, around security, around dealing with confidential data. Yeah. So, and what we're seeing in the market right now, like, until recently, there was only one best player, which is kind of GPT-4 from OpenAI. But more and more, the competition is kind of closing in. Yeah. So, which means that underlying market of models is being commoditized. And then these players will need to start to distinguish across multiple dimensions, not just what is the quality of the model, but for example, also what is the cost of the model, right? So that you can actually balance the use case with what particular model to use. Yeah. Now, how are we responding to this? We already introduced the enterprise GenAI architecture in 2023, essentially decoupling from the GenAI providers on the right-hand side, and then allowing our clients and our partners to build all kinds of these vertical use cases that McKinsey spoke about, using the low-code power of Pega as a platform. But of course, we applied that power of the low-code platform as well to build these 20 plus boosters in 2023, and we're already built out like the key use cases that drive most of the value. But you can use the low-code power of Pega to build these use cases yourself, build out those use cases yourself as well, in a safe environment that addresses the enterprise concerns. For example, there's a central place here now where we can govern, let's filter out all confidential data before we make a call out to generative AI. Now, what we announced at Pega World is that we're opening this up. We're responding to this kind of commoditization of these underlying services. And we no longer just want to support OpenAI through Azure, but we will be opening up in future to AWS and Google. Yeah? And it's not just the particular Google models like Gemini, but Google alone has over 100 models that they offer on their platform, including Claude, etc. And the same goes for AWS. Yeah, so we're doing that for custom use cases first. So those use cases you would build for your clients, or our clients build ourselves using the power of low code. In future, we may open it up to our own features as well. All right, so but we're opening up to that ecosystem. Now, what else are we doing? Yeah, so in terms of where are we now, how is Pega responding? Now, ultimately, we need to deliver on this expectation that everyone expects to be able to do more. Yeah, whether it's in customer engagement, in self-service, in operations, you name it. people want to be more effective, doing more. Yeah, and how we responded in 2023, as I already explained, we introduced the GenAI architecture, and then we built out over 20 boosters in these various areas to allow these different personas to actually do more. Yeah, just to give you 3 quick examples. In one-to-one customer engagement, we created the ability to generate all kinds of intelligent treatments. In customer service, people are getting guidance around how to reply, for example, to an incoming email. But we also do things like call summarization or use cases around simulating customers when you want to train your agents. And when we go to operations, you see an example here from our AIM solution that where there's a particular financial account that looks a little bit suspicious. So there's a KYC analyst who's looking at the account, and at the end of the case, we actually suggest what to do. In this case, to file a suspicious activity report, and so that suggestion actually comes from GenAI. But we also draft an entire summary that the analyst can then further tune before he sends it off. Yeah, so that was 2023. And then in 2024, we continue down this path, but we're building more of these kind of out-of-the-box solutions that heavily leverage the creative power of generative AI. Yeah, around these themes of designing more, developing more, and ultimately doing more. Yeah, so let's have a look first at designing more. Yeah, so, and you probably guess where I'm going here, but the whole idea is that you want to allow your clients really to build out a lot more journeys, processes, workflows on Pega. Yeah, so, and a stumbling block is then, in a lot of cases that you want to ideate quicker on how to implement a particular workflow or application. Yeah, or maybe, yeah, ideally you would like to be able to have people who don't know any Pega. They should be able to just say, hey, this is my vision of a particular application. Can you play back to me what that application could look like? Yeah. Now, and traditionally, of course, we would say, let's get into a meeting room with a stack of Post-its, and we'll come out after 3 weeks when we know what kind of application we want to build. But let's turn this around. We can really accelerate that if you can just write down specify what kind of application you want to build at a very, very high level, and then use the creative power of GenAI Blueprint to generate a blueprint of that application. Yeah, so I guess by now, most of you have already tried this. We have tens of thousands of blueprints that already have been generated by our clients, by our partners. You can see the little QR code there, but it's if you Google Pega Blueprint, pega.com/blueprint, you will easily get there. Yeah, so you can see here I was saying, well, I want to build a particular application, and then it's recommending what kind of case types to build, and then ultimately it will flesh out this entire application. It will say I can pick one of these case types. Well, it actually will generate kind of a full case lifecycle for any of these case types. Of course, I can make changes to the prompts. I can get rid of certain steps if I don't want to. But you see the example here in a moment where we will actually see the actual case lifecycle being generated. Here you see. Yeah, so definitely recommend you, if you haven't tried it so far, I trust that most of you have done it, but do try it out. But this is also a great tool to get all kinds of people interested into building workflows and applications on Pega for their particular business problem. Yeah, so this is ideal also to use in your kind of brainstorming sessions with clients, but also within clients, whatever, a center of excellence could use it to get more people on board on Pega by letting them actually kind of create their application on pega.com or a view of that application. And in this case, drive internal demand generation as well. Yeah, of course, we can take a blueprint and we can actually imported into Pega.
Peter, I wanted to ask you a quick question. You bring up a great point with Center of Excellence, and a lot of people are using this on their desktop and just using it, or the new kiosk, they're seeing it. But can you give us any examples how clients and partners are using the GenAI blueprint in practice? Like what's working for them, what's not working for them?
Yeah. No, well, I think one good way to use it is, let's say there's a particular domain, a particular new workflow you want to onboard, you can accelerate that ideation process. Yeah, so it's much easier to look at the generated application and say, what is it what we would like to change? When you have a real example in front of you, and you as Pega partners, you may know Pega already kind of inside out, but certainly for internal clients at a customer, they may not have that view. Yeah, this COE might have, but their internal clients, for them, Pega is something completely new. So you can really use that then to kind of accelerate that. To accelerate that process of onboarding new workflows onto Pega. Also, it could be used as, let's say, for lack of a better term, an internal sales tool. Yeah, either by you as partners or by the COEs. They can actually send it to particular lines of businesses that they want to really acquire as new internal customers, and they can just tell them, just send them the blueprint link and say, why don't you experiment with this for various use cases you may have, and if you're interested, talk to us, and we can have a discussion about really building your process onto Pega. So Randy, is that answering your question a little bit?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Peter.
Awesome. Okay, so let me dive in a little bit further then. Let's go into actually developing more, right? So because it's no use to accelerate the kind of the design process if the developers are still on the critical path to further kind of really flesh out these kind of designs into end-to-end working integrated applications. Yeah, so Alan already promised, like, hey, we need to accelerate and double developer productivity. Yeah? What if you could do that by providing intelligent guidance in the application? Now, in 2023, there was already kind of many different points in the developer journey where you could actually, generate parts of the data model. What are logical pick list items? How can I map to a particular REST interface? You could generate test data. So tons of different places where we were already using the power of generative AI. And we have built that out further in many different areas of the developer experience. The other thing that we wanted to do to give you a little bit of a one-stop shop, where you could go and ask questions. So we introduced GenAI Autopilot, and it has all the capabilities that some of you may know from Self-Study Buddy. So we want to achieve a particular goal. How do I do it in Pega? It can actually provide me with the answer based on all the knowledge we have in our product documentation. But it can actually also take me there. Yeah, if it recommends me to, how do I create a particular report? You can see it gives me an answer here, and it takes me to explore data where I can then build this out. Now, this is still early days for Autopilot, but this is something that we build out over time with way more deeper support. But the entire Self-Study Buddy capability is already in there at the moment. Now, finally, we get more into doing more because it's great to have better support for, getting new, building out more processes, workflows, and journeys on Pega. But what's in it for the end users? The people who are working in customer service or working in operations, trying to get their job done. And that can be daunting and that can be complex. Yeah. So the general idea here is like, how can we make every employee, basically be our best employee, right? So what does our best employee know? She knows in any circumstance what is the next best step to take. Yeah. But she can also adapt to changing volumes in work. Yeah. Or also adapt to changes in policies or guidelines or whatever it is. Right. So in this way, get it right the first time. And what we want to do is to give every kind of caseworker kind of a GenAI coach that can kind of coach the end user through the process of successfully resolving a particular case. Yeah, so and to front that, we have this capability called GenAI Coach. Yeah, so it's really helping us towards achieving, a positive case outcome quickly, and it can also lead us to underlying capabilities like Knowledge Buddy, like Analyze, like Automate. Right. So to give you a flavor, here we have GenAI Coach working in a sales automation environment. Right. So it also applies to the applications that we build on top. And we're asking here, how can we progress a particular sales deal, right? So GenAI Coach has all the information on the case, all the relevant background, knowledge as well, and potential tools to get additional data. And based on that, it can provide us guidance, also based on clever prompts that you can set up in the implementation, guidance towards resolving this, in this case, resolving a particular case, in this case, closing a particular sales deal. Yeah? And like I said, there's more capabilities in there, like Knowledge Buddy. And Knowledge Buddy is a little bit the equivalent of ChatGPT, but then for particular domains. Yeah, so particular specific areas where we would like to provide support to an end user to answer questions that's hidden in a particular stack of documents. Yeah, so typical example could be all customer self-service documentation that a particular bank has. Yeah, so we just put a buddy on top. You can ask questions, and you will get an answer really derived from the information that's hidden in these test documents. Yeah, but it could also be an internal application. Yeah, so let's say I have a stack of procedures that my caseworkers need to follow. I just put a buddy on top. Yeah, and I can, let's say it's all KYC working, standard operation procedures that we need to follow. I'm looking at a particular account, so I can ask it what to do, but the buddy will actually have all the information of the account as well, and that we're sitting in, right? So it can combine the knowledge with the context to give you the right answer. Yeah. So this way we can design more, we can develop more, and do more in Pega 24.1, mapped to these kind of GenAI capabilities, as you can see them here. Yeah. So to then close, and I might take like maybe, Randy, I might take like just 3 minutes extra, if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
I do
please.
want to give,
Please.
yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I do want to give a bit of a flavor where we might be heading. Yeah, so this is not so much about very specific features that we're going to release in the next release or something like that. I'm heading up the AI lab, so I want to give you more of an intuition where GenAI might be going in the longer term. And like I said, the North Star enterprise for Pega is the autonomous enterprise. So the simple answer is we need to make GenAI more autonomous. Yeah. So what do I mean with that? Yeah. So essentially, when you look at our GenAI architecture, yes, there's all kinds of models at the bottom, Google, OpenAI, but maybe also new players that will build out new models. And on top, we have all these different use cases I spoke about. But is there some kind of more fundamental evolution that we can point to that will have, more, that will last longer than just the new model that will come out tomorrow or next week? And of course, I think there is. And here's the evolution, that we're seeing here. Yeah? And it's a bit of a technical evolution. I gave you the advanced warning. Here we're more in the AI lab session, part of the presentation. But many of the capabilities that we have right now, almost all of them, they are engineered prompts. Yeah. So if I generate a new treatment in Customer Decision Hub, basically there's a particular prompt behind it. End user may not see the prompt, but where we, based on information, dynamic information, we tell the GenAI what we want, generate a new treatment for privacy first hesitant buyers here, for example, and it will give us the answer, and then we interpret that answer and give it back to the user. Yeah, so technically quite simple, single call of a dynamic prompt to a GenAI service. The next step up is to say, let's give GenAI, let's make it slightly more autonomous by giving it some basic tools to use. Let's give it, for example, a search engine together with a corpus. Yeah, and if that sounds familiar, Hey, you're right. That's essentially what knowledge buddy is, right? So as an example, when we have a question here in self-study buddy, for example, we ask the question, it will look at its corpus. In this particular example, it's all Pega product documentation. It will do a search with the search engine, and you get top N hits, and then it will provide an answer based on the top search results. So we can really constrain it to that particular domain, yeah, by clever combination of a search engine and generative AI. And so you might go, well, that's interesting, Peter. Yeah. But why should we stop there? You know, like, why shouldn't we give way more tools to GenAI to make it truly autonomous, and also not just use it in this very scripted manner with one tool, just a search engine and a corpus, and we can script it. We can say first do a search, then use GenAI. But if we give it many more tools, it actually needs to figure out when to use what kind of tool. Yeah. So in that sense, ultimately where we're going then is in the direction what's called autonomous agents, really making GenAI more agentic. We give it many different tools it can use to read information, to take action, but it also needs to use the GenAI capabilities to generate plans, given on a fairly vague statement that an end user makes, a very ambiguous statement. It needs to use GenAI to figure out what are the steps that I need to take, and how can I use what kind of tool to get to that particular outcome. And while we're going through that process, it needs to be able to kind of reflect on those particular steps. Yeah. So, and we built these core capabilities into the platform, but we're just starting to kind of let these capabilities surface into the application. So I'm only going to show one here, but an example is Customer Decision Hub Assistant. For an end user, still a fairly basic ID. I have some questions. I want to do something in Customer Decision Hub. For instance, what is the performance of a particular offer? I can ask. But underneath, it's actually using this kind of agentic type of approach because it has multiple tools. It knows, like, hey, you know, it can actually research what kind of offers did we set up in the next best action hierarchy. But it also has tools to find out, hey, what is the current performance of particular offers? And it has access to all the CDH product documentation, right? So based on a particular question, it really figures out how to use these tools. And I have an ugly slide, internal slide here, where we actually generate a plan on the fly, how to use these different tools in succession to get to a particular answer or outcome. And in this case, these are just tools that are reading information, but you can imagine we can extend that in future to actually taking particular actions. Yeah. So with that's basically where, you know, I think that's something that's not just valid for, next week and next month or next release. It's something where you'll see more and more examples pop up over time, where the capabilities that we have today, many are using just this engineered prompt, but a couple of those use cases, they will move more into, let's say, more into the right and make more autonomous use of GenAI. Yeah. So with that, if you want to know more, just a quick plug for the AI Manifesto, which is a document we wrote on, how to implement AI and reap all the benefits of AI, but also do that in a responsible fashion, as well as we have these Pega World sessions. There's a particular session here, which is kind of a more expanded version of what I just presented, the session on prompts, buddies, coaches, and agents. So I definitely encourage you to look into that session again, the recording, as well as our panel on sparks of AI-driven autonomous operations with Rabobank, with Lloyd's, and the US government talking about their early experiences with generative AI. Yeah, with that, fair amount of information to go through. So, but I really wanted to give you a bit of a flavor that this is really a market where there's so much happening, and as you have experienced, it's something where we have been very, very actively developing. Indeed, back to the question that Rennie asked earlier. What is a good way to actually go about selling, delivering, actually adopting these technologies? I think one good way to think about is actually become hands-on with it. So that means that it's really, really important that you stay current and get up to date with these technologies using Pega Academy. But on the flip side, when I think about our clients, what worked best in getting clients to actually buy these GenAI solutions, and the floodgates are opening now, is not the traditional sales cycles, but for instance, hackathons have worked really well to bring these GenAI capabilities to life. So in that sense, a very hands-on approach. Maybe you should first run an internal hackathon within your own company, and then see if you can do these type of hackathons also at your clients. But for that, of course, also there needs to be a bit of understanding of what Pega is and how Pega really works. And you can only do that, if you get enabled and trained on Pega. But how do you do that if people have different backgrounds and different levels of knowledge in Pega? That's a tough problem. Maybe we need more solutions than what we have today. Maybe GenAI can come to the rescue in the form of Socrates.
That sounds great. Hey, Peter, before we shift over, a couple quick questions that had come in, mostly relating to GenAI and Knowledge Buddy. The first question that came in is asked, is additional info populated via GenAI or Knowledge Buddy?
Yes, but always under full control of the client. Yeah, so in many of these cases, of these use cases, you can actually you can write a prompt template, and a prompt template could combine information and then send it off to GenAI. You get a result. So, but you have full control what information then is shared with the GenAI model. Yeah, or if you use something like GenAI Coach, it basically has access to the information in the case, but you can also give it access to additional sources of knowledge. Yeah, so yes, it's fully contextual. It can use that information. Also, on the flip side, you have full control of what information you would expose. Yeah, so it's not that it can read certain data where you say, well, I don't want to put this data into GenAI. And we have additional controls like centrally in the architecture, and before we call out to let's say Azure, for example, we can also filter out certain types of data like PI data, which also gives you full control.
Excellent. And then the second question from my good friend Anupam, is GenAI Automate only available for sales automation applications, or is that available in vanilla Pega platform as well?
Yeah, so the exact minute detail there, I might not know, but I can definitely tell you what the idea and the vision is that all those capabilities there, it's more like it's inherited from the platform and then available in the applications, than necessarily the other way around. So these type of automate capabilities, we do want to make them available as part of the core platform experience as well. Depends a little bit on where we are with it at the moment, but definitely, like anything that's generically reusable across different types of Pega applications, we want to build it at the right level, or we want to push it to the level of platforms so that all applications can actually ultimately kind of benefit from it.
That's great. And one last question, how are these GenAI products licensed?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's a good question.
So at a high level, you could say that anything which has to do with design and development, we really want to encourage people to be able to profit from that. So we make that available for free. You need to sign an addendum, etc. But things like Blueprint, Autopilot, these capabilities in the developer experience, they're typically available to our clients at no extra cost. The other side is more using generative AI as an end user, right? As a case worker, things like GenAI Coach, they come at an additional price or uplift. Knowledge Buddy, same story, right? So which can also be invocation based and knowledge based. Knowledge Buddy, we see more of a number of queries type pricing that many of our clients want, even though you can also get it as an uplift on users. And then, sometimes GenAI makes its way in these kind of end applications. Let's say customer decision hub, for example. Then if you want to do something like intelligent treatment generation, that lives into one-to-one ops manager, but you need to have a license to one-to-one ops manager. But if you have that license, again, you can just use GenAI without additional cost.
All right. That sounds great. And we got one more that just slid in. This is a pretty easy one, I think. Can we use GenAI on client managed cloud instances?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started off making it for Pega Cloud only because we truly believe that the best experience for our clients is with Pega Cloud. But likewise, we also understand that whilst most clients want to go to the cloud, it will take some time for some of our clients to actually get there, or they have other constraints that they simply cannot work around. So we introduced a capability which we call GenAI Prem Bridge, and that basically unlocks all the GenAI capabilities that we have for clients that are currently not running on Pega Cloud, that are running on-premise, or they're running on a client managed cloud, for example. They can integrate with the GenAI Prem Bridge, and then that will unlock all the GenAI capabilities. And the GenAI Prem Bridge it's a component that itself actually lives on the cloud, but it's a thin facade on top of the cloud services you would use anyway, and the GenAI cloud services like from Google or from Azure or from AWS, right? So in that sense, it's just a thin layer on top of that, but it would unlock all the GenAI capabilities for those clients. And Prem Bridge is also a license component.
Okay. Hey, Peter, thank you very much. Let's slide over to Socrates and let's talk about Socrates a little bit. We're gonna bring in our Senior Director of Learning Strategy and Solutions, Kate Lepore. Kate, are you with us?
I am here. Hopefully you will see me here in a second. And I will just bring up some slides. But while I do that, let me just do a brief introduction. So my name's Kate Lepore. And let me just see if I can get this to share. Walk and chew gum at the same time here. All right. Move back up to my cover slide. All right. Hopefully you're all seeing my my deck.
Perfect. Yep.
So just a brief introduction. I am part of engineering and I run Pega Academy and our documentation. So if you've been going through any of the learning, whether the missions online or the reviewing our documentation, release notes, whatnot, that comes out of my team. And we've got a really exciting announcement that we just launched at Pega World, which I'd like to go through with you a little bit right now, called Socrates. Just briefly, background is there's been a wide consensus, if you look pretty much like across the world, that all stakeholders, whether you're looking at Davos from world leaders to Microsoft founder Bill Gates to what corporate education is talking about and so on down the line, there's a consensus that there's an opportunity to transform how we educate people using generative AI, and it will radically change the experience. And what that really means is, as we look to this technology, you already heard Peter talk about all the new capabilities coming that will enable developers on our product while they're developing and so forth. So what we learn is going to change. Why we're learning it, I think we become over time more conceptual because you'll have more assistance in the product. But most importantly, what I'll talk to you about is how we learn. And this is where Socrates is coming in. So Pega has always recognized that in the last 5 years, demand for training has been increasing at a pretty steep rate. There's always a demand for the developers in the ecosystem. And so how do we continue to meet that demand for the developers and grow the skills so that clients are having the most effective implementations? And so we took a really concerted effort to say, what are the problems in today's e-learning, whether it's Pega's or even just widely in the industry? And if you kind of zoom out and think about your own education experience and so forth, there's a skills gap, and you often hear people talk about, well, I want an A player on my delivery team, or we have top performers, or things like that. And the reality is, when you think about school, most programs are time-based, and what you end up with is this bell curve distribution where some people get it really fast and are at the high end of the bell curve, and you have a bunch in the middle, and then you have others at the low end. And the real situation is that people aren't necessarily good or bad at everything. They just need more or less time to get through the content. But in education, we've artificially put this time construct on top of things. So, you're in a day-long workshop. If you don't get it by the end of the day, well, you got what you got out of it, and you move on. Whereas in e-learning, similarly, it's a set content that's delivered to you. And often we try to maximize the reach of our content so we're not creating so many permutations of it. So it becomes a bit of a one-size-fits-all, which makes it a little bit harder for not everybody to understand everything. And typically there's areas that we all have as weak spots. So our first objective was, how can we improve the mastery of the content and shift everybody up the curve so that everybody is getting to that expert level? Our second challenge we wanted to address is that often you go through the content in a pretty fast successive period. And if you're familiar with the forgetting curve, it basically says by tomorrow, you're going to forget a lot of what you learned today. So how do we do a better job to make the content we're training you on more memorable so that when you are on the job, you are able to apply it? And so as we look at traditional e-learning, it's pretty passive. I mean, you're reading text or you're watching a video, but your brain isn't actively having to apply this information in a constructive way or in an active way such that it now bolts on to what you already know and becomes more memorable at a later time. So our second objective is really working on the retention by making a more interactive format with the students so that it's engaging to them and applicable to their environment. And I think the third piece that goes into that, which I didn't throw the slide in here just for sake of time, but it's, as an adult, we learn differently than we did as children. When children, you don't have as much experience, so you tend to have to learn a lot of information whether or not you're going to apply it. But as an adult, you're really more focused on, what's my problem? What do I need to know now, versus learning things just in case I might need to know it. So we're looking at all these aspects of learning principles, and with the capability of GenAI, now we're able to do one-to-one teaching at scale. So the Socratic method, if you're familiar with this, is basically having a conversation where, like a tutor would be asking questions of the student or the learner, and the student is having to respond to those questions and think through, perhaps it's a scenario, and they say, now in this scenario, how would you do something? So the Socratic method is going to guide the student along the conversation, and if they get stuck, it will insert some assistance to help them through it. But what it's really going to do is assess them in the conversation, and the things that the student knows well, you just zoom past that information and move on and focus on the areas where you don't have as much expertise or you need some reinforcement. And so it will dynamically adjust to the individual's needs based on their learning capabilities and weak spots, and try to quickly get them into thinking and interacting with the prompt, because when you're having a conversation, you're listening to the other person and then trying to react and so forth. And it's very much mimicking that experience where the learner is having to reflect on what they know, apply the information, and answer the question. So it allows the student who needs more time to go at their own pace. It's got a whole learning science behind it that's going to give lots of different ways of approaching content depending on the student's, need. But if you can go fast, then go fast. So we are removing the time constraint out of the situation and allowing them to go fast. I think the other thing that what we're doing with this that's really important, and I'll show you a little demo just to give you a flavor of this, is that traditional format, you would go through learning and you get a quiz at the end of it. What we're doing now instead of the quizzes is using this conversation as our means to assess the student. And if you think about it, that's much more reflective of what real life is like. If you went on an interview, someone's going to ask you a question and you're going to be evaluated based on how you can answer, how robust is your answer, how relevant is it. And that's what the LLM allows us to do. So I'm just going to walk you through a little example on this. This is our first mission that we've put out there in this format. So this is live today on Pega Academy, but this is just a recorded demo so that you don't have to go through the entire module, which will take us a little bit longer than we have allotted this morning. But on the data model, when you enter into the experience, you click from the normal Pega Academy. And let me just orient you to what you will see. The main window on the right 2/3 of the slide is all where the conversation is going to occur. On the left side, we have learning objectives and preferences. So if I went down and expanded these preferences, this allows us to not only use machine translation so that we can interact in local language for the student. We've got 10 languages to start, which represent where the majority of our clients are. You can adjust the tone. So if I'm a really knowledgeable person, I wanted to use the normal language and talk to me as an expert. I can pick my industry, and then I can also interact in a voice-driven interaction. So in language, it will voice back to me. So if I have accessibility interests, I can do that. Now, as you look at the learning objectives, these are basically the things that we would want students to know as they go through this area. So I've picked, in this case, I have some experience, and it's going to say, great, let's give you a scenario based on the industry we picked and give me a level of detail. And this is probably the densest part of the conversation, where it's teeing you up with this example and asking me to answer some questions to evaluate me on those learning objectives. So I've answered some of it here, and now it's asking me a few follow-up questions to see how much do I actually know. And when it gets to a point, it will pause there and say, great, let me evaluate. And in this case, it's evaluated that I've answered all but 2 of the learning objectives satisfactorily. So now it's just going to drill into those weak areas and continue to ask the questions until we get to the point where I've completed it, in which case I just move on to the next part of the mission. And in some cases, this will be going on to a hands-on exercise, or it may be going into the next module, depending on the nature of the where you are in the mission. So just to kind of reiterate what the flow looks like, the student can start in, set their preferences, as we saw, and those can be adjusted at any time during the conversation. If you leave the module partway through, it will maintain the progress that what you've completed. You can come back in and say, hey, you know what, the next module, maybe I want a different scenario. So I might ask it, pick another industry. And as it's going through, it's doing a pre-assessment against those learning objectives and then continually assessing the student as they're answering and providing responses, but also providing them with feedback. So if they got part of an answer right, but not everything, it's going to clarify and say, okay, this is the area that you didn't really answer, so let's focus there. Or enrichment activities. And in the case where we're, say, a new person coming into the mission and the content, we would probably see more information up front that's of a traditional nature. We'll present them with a video that summarizes the concept, or we may start with some text in a more traditional format. But as soon as possible, Socrates will start moving it into that conversational format so that the student is quickly interacting and able to apply this information to something that they really understand that's relevant to their industry or existing knowledge. And we find in learning practices that the more you can, as an adult, bolt on new information to something you already know, the more likelihood you'll have of remembering it and then being able to recall it later when you need to go apply it. So this is the flow of how this works right now. I recognize that we've gone a little long here on this session. So what I'd like to do is just flash this up. There is a landing page for Pega GenAI Socrates off of Pega Academy that you can get to from this. But let me just stop sharing for a second and just check and see if there's any questions that have come in.
The question that came in, Kate, can this be extended to clients to create custom training for applications built on Pega or primarily the Pega training only?
Great question. And that we got that quite a bit at Pega World. Our starting point is to prove this out on our own capability, much like we did with Self-Study Buddy, where that's based on just Pega's content. But we do envision the capability to add in client information and tailor this conversation even more to their scenario. I think what we need to do next is do a little more investigation with the clients on exactly what would that look like to the clients. And we have a number of different ways that we can go. One thing that Peter was just talking about with this knowledge buddy or the RAG architecture, we use that same approach, not just the knowledge buddy, but we are basically pointing to all of our documentation and our academy content, but primarily documentation, to guide this conversation and to surface videos and things to the student. So we've got that same ability to put in this RAG architecture, the information from the client, so that that can then be woven into the conversation.
That's great. Hey, Kate, let me ask you a question. How do we measure success?
That's great. So we are looking at a couple different things right now. Certainly traditional things is, smiley faces at the end of a course, the happy sheet as they call it. But we are really wanting to start to drill in and see how effective is this approach for learners. So we're looking at it from a number of different aspects. How well is the student experiencing this? How fast are they able to go through this? So their time to completion. We expect that this should, particularly if you're knowledgeable, accelerate the learning experience dramatically, in the sense of, a normal module might take you 2 hours. This could go as fast as a half an hour. So, whittle it down pretty quickly. And then also efficacy on the job. And that's probably the hardest one that we're going to look at, but we'll look at different ways to say, well, how are people performing on certifications, or how is the feedback coming back on their ability to complete the end assessment and, get to that mastery level versus, today when you take a quiz, or even if you go take one of our certifications, we allow you to pass with not 100%, right? There's a cut score that you have to meet in order to get there, but that means you're not getting everything if you only got a 70% on an exam. So we want to get everybody up to that top end and master it. And so that will be some of our measures.
Great. And then, Kate, another question. Is Socrates going to look back into all previous learning history for a person in their Pega Academy to gauge their level of experience that they have on a specific topic?
That's, definitely an area that we have started to discuss. I think we are probably creating that line in the sand now for looking at what they learn and tracking some information about what have they learned and what have they mastered in this Socratic format. And then going forward, we'll have the benefit of that profile to be able to tailor it again to that learner. So I think like preferences, it will start to get integrated into their profile, and we'll say, oh, well, we see you've already gone through a constellation mission. Let's move you, we can ask you more advanced conversations about that.
That's great. So, Kate, one of the things I love about Pega is that, we don't rest on our laurels. We don't just throw things out there. Let me ask you this question: from the time we started, how was your thinking on Socrates in this? How's it evolved?
Yeah, well, when we started this, and this has been a pretty rapid implementation, we went from a hackathon early or late last fall into a proof of concept around January, and then to production at Pega World. And when we started, we were doing these very large prompts. We were trying to get one prompt, do everything to, introduce the concept, to, translate, to, figure out how to answer the student. And what we learned was, with the state of the models right now for LLM, we were better off breaking the prompts down into singular tasks. So like you just heard Peter talk about an agent approach, we're effectively doing that with how we're structuring the prompts. So each prompt, one's focused on translation, one's focused on doing the actual assessing the conversation, one's seeing if the student asks a question instead of answers the question, and responding appropriately. So we found that has worked really, really well. And based on the nature of that prompt, we can point to different models or LLMs. So the simple ones, we point to 3.5. The more complex ones, we can point to the more advanced, 4.0 and so forth. So these are some things that we see as a continuous evolution for how we will look at the prompts and continue to stay current with the models, as well as adding in more sophistication and capabilities with it by prompting and the building the content, obviously.
That's great. Kate, thank you very much. Listen, I really appreciate everything that you have brought to the table today, Peter, as well. I wanted to take a quick minute to thank Peter and Kate. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and really your dedication to the craft. The information we just get out of this is unbelievable. And also a quick thank you to Dan Thorne, who is keeping everything running smoothly in the background. And for everyone else, I just want to remind you again that we do this on the second Friday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and invites usually go out about 2 weeks ahead of time. Next month on August 9th, we're going to have our Chief Product Officer, Karim Agnul, back with us again to talk about Blueprint with all the improvements since he was here back in March. I like to call it Blueprint Bigger and Better, so please don't miss it. And speaking of missing it, if you ever do miss an episode, please feel free to email me and I'd be happy to send you a link to any of the recordings you would like to watch again or share with your coworkers. And with that, we come to the close of another great Pega Partner Hour. Again, thanks to Peter and Kate. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll get them to the right people, get your partner manager to get back to you, get Kate and Peter's team back to you. We really just want to see you help expand your use of Pega. So I wish you all the best. I look forward to seeing you all on August 9th for the next episode of the Pega Partner Hour. And until then, sell and be well. Thank you very much for joining us.